Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox. You are taking a live look once again over at the Israel-Gaza border as we continue to bring you the latest on the Israel-Hamas war. Now, we did have a news briefing that wrapped up a short time ago with the Israeli government. Spokesperson Eylon Levi providing the latest details here and answering questions from members of the media. I do want to pop that up so we can listen in raw and unfiltered.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Israeli government spokesperson Eylon Levi. This is day 109 of the October 7th war. Today is a difficult day for the entire country. This morning, the IDF announced that 21 reservists were killed in Gaza yesterday in an incident near Khan Yunis. In total, the IDF death toll has gone up by a total of 24 since yesterday's briefing, taking the total number of Israeli soldiers killed since the start of the October 7th massacre to 556. The entire country grieves with the families of Sergeant Major Reserves Matan Lazar, age 32, Sergeant First Class Reserves Israel Sokol, 24, Sergeant Major Reserves Rafael Elias Mosheov, 33, Sergeant Major Reserves Barak Chaim Ben Valid, 33, Sergeant First Class Reserves Sidrik Garin, 23. Sergeant First Class Reserves Nicholas Berger, 22. Master Sergeant Reserves Yoav Levi, 29. Sergeant First Class Reserves Yoval Lopez, 27. Sergeant First Class Reserves Elkanah Yehuda Sfez, 25. Sergeant Major Reserves Sergei Gontmaher, 37. Sergeant First Class Reserves Hadar Kapeluk, 23. Sergeant Major Reserves Zegea Daniel Kassau, 38. Sergeant Major Reserves Shai Biton Hayun, 40. Sergeant Major Reserves Adam Bismuth, 35. Sergeant Major Reserves Itamar Tal, 32. Sergeant First Class Reserves Ahmed Abu Latif, 26. Captain Reserves Ariel Mordechai Wolfstahl, 28. Master Sergeant Reserves Elkanah Wiesel, 35. Captain Reserves Ner Binyamin, 29. Sergeant First Class Reserves Sagi Idan, 24. Sergeant Major Reserves Mark Kononovich, 35. And separately from that incident with the 21 reservists also, Captain Eyal Mevorach Twito, 22. Major Eylon Levi, 24. And Major David Nati Alfasi, 27. 24 soldiers, 21 reservists, all with ordinary lives and jobs and families on the morning of the October 7th massacre, leaving behind widows, orphans, bereaved parents and broken families. The IDF updated this morning the reservists were killed in an operation to dismantle terror infrastructure in southeastern Gaza near Khan Yunis, adjacent to the Gaza-Israel border, just 600 meters away. Infrastructure that posed a direct threat to the communities cleansed in the October 7th massacre and which had to be dismantled to enable the residents' safe return home. Around 4 p.m., terrorists fired an RPG at a tank securing the force. Simultaneously, an explosion caused the collapse of two two-story structures with the force inside and nearby. It's believed that the explosion was most likely caused by the explosives laid down by our forces to demolish that infrastructure. The IDF has opened an inquiry into the tragedy. Following the incident, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu underlined the need to learn the necessary lessons from the incident and do everything to safeguard the lives of our soldiers. The Prime Minister noted the IDF's great achievements in this war that Hamas started, including completing the encirclement of Khan Yunis today, and acknowledged the very heavy costs our country is paying. He added that while we bow our heads in memory of the fallen, we are not relenting even for a moment in striving toward the goal to which there is no alternative: total victory over Hamas, the Prime Minister said, and I quote, "Together we will fight, and together we will win." A humanitarian update. Yesterday, the 10,000th truck of humanitarian aid entered Gaza since the start of the October 7 massacre. That's 213 trucks going in, 92 via security checks at Nitzana and then Rafah, and 121 via Kerem Shalom. In total, since the massacre, the total aid entering Gaza through the crossings with Israel and Egypt is 180 186,540 tons, 186,540 tons aboard 10,136 trucks. We repeat, there is still excess capacity for more aid to enter. There are no limitations on the admission of humanitarian aid. International actors interested in seeing more aid in Gaza should send more. We still have a problem that UN agencies are unable to distribute the aid as quickly as Israel is processing it, and it is lamentable that UN officials who have also been covering up for the fact that Hamas hijacks aid and covering up for the fact that it wages war out of hospitals are trying to cover up their own systemic failure by demanding the opening of new entry routes when there is already adequate and excess capacity at the existing ones. And of course, we welcome the establishment of 4 new warehouses to enhance the logistical capabilities of the international organizations on the ground receiving the humanitarian aid. More information, as always, is available on the COGAT mini site, which is regularly updated with the latest details of the humanitarian aid efforts. An update on the hostage crisis. Time is running out for the hostages we fear are being tortured and raped and executed in the Hamas terror dungeons. Latest figures remain unchanged. Of the 253 hostages abducted on October 7th, 132 remain in Gaza, 28 of whom we know are already dead. There are another 4 from before the massacre, dating back to 2014. Those hostages have all been held incommunicado without Red Cross access. Yesterday, the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met French Armed Forces Minister Sébastien Lecornu and noted that we in Israel are still waiting for proof that the medicines for the hostages, which France helped deliver, have actually reached their destination at all. Today, the Knesset heard chilling testimonies from survivors of Hamas captivity about the sexual abuse taking place in the Hamas terror dungeons. Survivor Chen Goldstein Almog spoke of hostages missing their periods, and she expressed her hope that that is because their bodies are shutting down the possibility of getting pregnant while they are being raped. 19 of the remaining hostages are female, and the youngest, Gali Tarshansky, is only 13. Captivity survivor Aviva Siegel also told the Knesset that men are also experiencing sexual abuse. She said they're experiencing the same as the women, they just can't get pregnant. Siegel, whose husband Keith is still a hostage, said that the terrorist captors are dressing up the girls as dolls and, quote, making the girls their dolls and doing whatever they want with them whenever they want. We call on all countries to pressure Hamas by all means possible to release the hostages immediately and unconditionally and secure access for the Red Cross. Until then, it shouldn't take courage for celebrities and public figures to do what Gwyneth Paltrow said, I think just yesterday, and make it clear that rape is not resistance. That's the end of today's briefing. We'll now take your questions. As always, I think we already have a few in the chat.
The first question comes from Lior Soroka, The Washington Post. Can you relate to the report on CNN that Israel has proposed a deal with Hamas whereby Hamas leadership in Gaza would be granted safe passage to leave the Strip as part of the broader ceasefire agreement?
The goals of this war, as laid out by the War Cabinet after the October 7th massacre and handed down to the IDF, remain unchanged. The destruction of Hamas's governing and military capabilities in the Gaza Strip and the return of all the hostages. There will be no ceasefire that leaves the hostages in Gaza and Hamas in power. Beyond that, we have nothing to elaborate.
The next question comes from Jim Williams of Zenga International News. Is there any response to the EU calling for a proposed peace conference to discuss what to do post-war and the EU's insistence on the establishment of a Palestinian state? And as a follow-up, do you have a reaction to the US and UK multiple attacks on the Iranian proxies in Yemen in hopes of protecting commercial shipping in the Red Sea?
First of all, I'll address the question about the Houthi pirate threat. As we've been saying since the beginning of their attacks on international shipping, this is a global threat, and it's correct that the response should be global. We also note the remarks by the British noting the direct involvement of Iran in funding and arming and providing support for the Houthi attacks on global trade. And it's important, of course, people understand those attacks in the context of the Iranian imperial project in the Middle East. As for the question about the European Union, at the moment we are focusing on destroying Hamas and whatever people's positions within Israel about how to achieve a secure peace with the Palestinians, everyone understands that that simply cannot happen with Hamas still on the ground, and there needs to be a serious process of de-radicalization in order to make sure that we do not end up repeating this cycle of violence. Now, the Prime Minister has made his position clear. He objects to the establishment of a Palestinian state that would serve as an existential threat to Israel, especially in the wake of the October 7 massacre. Now that we understand the true extent of the threat that we are facing potentially. I mean, I can elaborate more on the Prime Minister's thinking in that regard, which is that anyone, even supporters of Palestinian statehood, when asked what that means, whether they support the Palestinians having an army or military capabilities, flatly reject that. The Prime Minister's position is that Palestinians should have all the powers to govern themselves and none of the powers to threaten Israel. Would statehood mean that Palestinians could have joint military exercises with Hezbollah or a mutual defense treaty with Iran or import North Korean weapons? Obviously, these statements are absurd, but these are long-term questions that we are going to have to discuss after the war. The question of how we achieve a secure peace with our neighbors, a peace that will require a serious push towards de-radicalization on the other side. And for now, we are focused and united on destroying Hamas and bringing the hostages home.
Joel Pollack from Breitbart News asks, can you comment on the emotional impact of such a huge loss? Does it make the Israeli public question the cost of the war, or does it make the Israeli public more determined to press ahead to victory?
The emotional cost of waking up to such horrific news is, of course, intense. Israel is a very small country, and that means that everyone in the country is now discovering how they are related or connected to those 24 soldiers through multiple degrees of separation. But the people in Israel understand very clearly why we are fighting this war, which is not a war of choice. It is a war that Hamas declared on us on October 7th with the massacre, and the bloodiest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, with an armed invasion by air, land and sea, an attack that they are threatening us, that they want to do again and again, and an attack that all of our allies, as they understood on October 8th, they understand that Hamas will not stop until it is stopped. And that is why we continue fighting to dismantle Hamas's military and governing capabilities and bring back the hostages. Because otherwise, if we return to the lines of October 6th, it will only be a matter of time until Hamas perpetrates another massacre again. Everyone understands the Hamas army of terror exists for the sake of war, and therefore for the sake of peace, it must go.
And that was Israeli government spokesperson Eylon Levi as he was answering questions from members of the media.